Good evening, and welcome to STARCAST from Planet Waves. My name is Eric Francis Coppolino, counseling astrologer, author of the Planet Waves horoscope, and this edition is for Thursday, the 7th of September, 2023. It's the edition of STARCAST that accompanies the Thursday evening horoscope and astrology article. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being a paying subscriber to Planet Waves. I have just added a bunch of people with trial memberships. This weekly program is part of what you get. So thank you so much. All right, so let's get into the astrology of the moment, which I outline in the article, but I think with astrology, it's always good to hear it and to read it. It makes much more sense when you take it in a couple of ways and think about it. And with astrology, it's like you have to go in layers. No matter how simple it may seem, there's always another facet that comes out when you turn around and look at it in a little bit of a different light. And that's why I am so dedicated to teaching and do so much of it. Teaching astrology is an art form, particularly if you are the kind of teacher who is not seeking to persuade your audience, but rather to introduce them to ideas. It's much easier to persuade. You can push emotional buttons and persuade people. But as we know from, let's just say the past 4 years of history, persuaded does not equal understanding. All right, so I begin the article tonight talking about the many planets retrograde. Of course, Venus retrograde just ended on Sunday. Mercury retrograde ends on the 15th after the Virgo new moon. But also, there's a whole bunch of slow movers that are retrograde, and that's because they're all concentrated on one side of the solar system, spanning a mere 120 degrees. So they're all on the same side of the sun, and when that happens, and the Earth passes between those planets and the slow movers way out of the fringes of the solar system, all the way in through Jupiter, in fact, the planets appear to be retrograde. That's because the Earth is, in a sense, lapping or overtaking them in its orbit. I'm talking about the spherical Earth, not the stationary plane of contemporary mythology. And we'll come to that eventually. Sooner or later, I'm going to have to really confront this whole business of the people so certain the Earth is flat. They are just so certain. It's hilarious. They're so certain there's not even a discussion. Okay, so the planets currently retrograde, besides Mercury, which is retrograde pretty often, or Uranus, in order. Uranus, Jupiter in Taurus, Eris, Chiron, in Aries, slightly out of order, Neptune and Nessus in Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, Pholus in Capricorn, and its little group there, and Pluto in Capricorn. So what the retrograde bodies say to me is that this is an introspective time. And introspection right now is very uncomfortable for people because our devices vacuum us out of our own psyche. All of this digital technology, unless it is used in a truly reflexive way, takes us out of ourselves. That's the reason why people have to take a selfie every 12 minutes to convince themselves that they exist. And it is why I think something so seemingly normal and pedestrian, ordinary, as taking a photo of your food. Personally, I mean, I don't mean to use too strong of a word, but I really find it disgusting that people can't actually eat their food without taking a picture of it and bragging about it. Eating food, unless you're sharing an intimate dinner with someone or sitting with your family or your friends, is a strictly private experience. And this is revealing to me that we don't know the difference between public and private, and that is the same as being vacuumed outside of ourselves. So too is using the entire internet as a mirror, having to post endless photos of oneself over and over again. Go to a place, publish a picture of you and that place. Come on, it seems normal, but I'm telling you, there's something else going on here. So the retrograde planets are calling us in. They're calling us to thoughtfully review the past. They're teaching us to focus our awareness inwardly so that we may have real relationships with ourselves and with other people. And we have a lot of room to grow on the inner level, which has largely been abandoned in the digital age, something I personally find to be quite troubling. Okay, so now Venus is direct, Mercury passed the interior conjunction. So Sunday, Venus stationed direct in Leo. The retrograde began November 22nd. It was in Leo quite a bit before that, I think from back in June. Venus will be in Leo until November 8th when it enters Virgo. So on these interplanet retrogrades, especially if they're in one sign, I count the entire duration that the planet is in the sign as part of the retrograde process. And Venus in Leo retrograde has been about a reevaluation of our values, and especially a reevaluation of money being the only measure of value. There are much more important things in life than money. Money is important, but I think what we do with it is more important. What we do with it is a matter of priorities. So that's going to keep unwinding, and I'll get to the Venus square Jupiter series of events in a moment. So Mercury retrograde is still in effect, and let's see now. How did I write this? The new moon. So there's a cluster of events coming, which is the new moon taking place on Thursday, the 14th, and then the next day, Friday comes after Thursday. Mercury stations direct. So at that point, it's about 8 days until the equinox. Now, Venus station direct square Jupiter. One feature of Venus retrograde has been a series of squares to Jupiter. The retrograde has been hanging out in a long square to Jupiter throughout. And for our purposes, anything in Leo can be square anything in Taurus. That's the old way to do it, and it's also similar to the way Vedic astrology works. So the station direct took place at approximately 90 degrees between Venus and Jupiter. 90-degree aspects are tense, and when Venus is involved, that is a tendency to need. And when Jupiter is involved, that is a tendency, it's been a long week, tendency to exaggerate. So there may be an exaggeration of need, and one of the ways to test your exaggeration, let me slow down. One of the ways to test your need level is to experiment with some generosity. The 3 dates of Venus square Jupiter were June 11, as Venus moved into the retrograde, August 22nd when it was retrograde, and the last one will be on September 17th, right ahead of the equinox. Now, I think one of the most important things going on in the sky right now is that Eris, this new thing, it's not that new anymore, discovered around like 2004 or something, named around 2006, I think. 2006, summer of 2006, when Pluto got demoted. And it's seeming like it was like 10 minutes ago. I remember writing that article. I was living in Brussels at the time, and it seemed just so new and like it would be new forever. But anyway, Eris is now getting established. And Eris is opposite Ceres. The essence of Ceres is food, sustenance, emotional nurturing. The essence of Eris is disruption of identity and of everything else due to digital conditions. And these are in an exact opposition parked on the lunar nodes. The lunar nodes bring in emphasis and they increase the scale of the event that surrounds them. They are quite confrontational in that you simply must deal with it. Now, I've noticed that a lot of people are kind of wondering when the other shoe is going to drop. We've become accustomed to living in disaster capitalism. Really, since 9/11, it has been one catastrophic event after the next, and it happens so often that I think that we are just bracing for it, as if you take a ride with somebody in their car, and like half the time they get into a serious accident, but you still have to keep getting into their car for some strange reason. Well, we're in that car that keeps crashing, known as American society, the inventors of disaster capitalism, which I don't think Mr. Keynes or Mr. Smith ever contemplated that capitalism would become based on one disaster following the next. But it is, and that's the society we live in. And I think that the people are bracing for whatever might be next. And I am reading in the charts, not to consider a digital event. That's more like 2025. But the astrology says now keep an eye on food. A lot of people are hoarding food. I stocked up in 2020 and have just passed on a bunch of stuff that I've been collecting since then. My diet has completely changed since then. Food, no matter in what form, does not last long. So I don't think that hoarding food is the answer. I do think that knowing people who are in touch with food supply lines, like local grocers that you know personally, farmers that you know personally, that's a good idea. So I wouldn't just shop at the farmer's market. I would spend time there and get there early and stay late and talk to people and find out, visit their farms and so forth. But I think the most important thing now is to recognize the influence that digital conditions have had on our diets. And how do you figure that out? Well, I can't say that it's been an improvement. I think that digital conditions have stressed us out. They've made people more on the go. And I think that Eris series on the nodes is a message to get your diet right. Learn how to eat what your body thrives on rather than what you crave. I recently have had a kind of a revolutionary experience of giving up carbs, cannabis, coffee, and a couple of other C words. And I am amazed at the change in my consciousness and in my body. And I'm noticing when I walk through a supermarket or a convenience store that it is just wall to wall rice, wheat, corn, and potatoes. Aisle after aisle after aisle. It just does not end. And it's freaking crazy. And it's why when you look around, people seem a little inflamed. This is plain to see. So that is my message with series opposite Eris. I have some very intuitive listeners and readers. People in my audience are better astrologers than almost all the astrologers that are that claim to be so. On the internet. I'm curious what you think about this. It's Venus in Aries Eris in Aries conjunct the North Node, Ceres in Libra conjunct the South Node. Of course, this is profound in terms of relationships because they're very Aries Libra thing. And anyway, curious to know what you think. I am planning another Planet Waves FM tomorrow night. I will be doing programs through the Equinox program on the 22nd. Then I'm going to take a couple of weeks off. I've found that I benefit from doing like a run of 5 or 6 shows and then recollecting myself, taking a break. I've got a dynamite show planned for you tomorrow. I have been in Western New York on a self-given photo assignment documenting the scene of the Love Canal incident from the 1970s. That piece is done. I'll be distributing it in a couple of weeks on the Planet Waves FM, Chiron Return Substack. I'll be talking about my visit on the program tomorrow. I'll also have a 75-minute interview with Roland Angle, the engineer, chairman of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. We're going to talk about the unhealed, festering wound of 9/11 and what that is about and how we can attain a state of reconciliation through truth. Thank you again for listening. Thank you for being a Planet Waves subscriber. If somehow you've stumbled into this podcast somewhere off campus, far-flung, try us at planetwaves.net, or you can read my Substack at planetwaves.eu. Once again, thank you for joining me. I am now going to get some rest and wake up in the morning and do Planet Waves FM. All right, lots of love. Thinking of you. Bye for now.